Every couple weeks, I get a DM from a high schooler or a college student asking me if I have any tips for succeeding in the creative world. And I am by no means successful. Like, I'm not out here making millions of dollars in Hollywood or anything, but I have managed to become financially free by doing freelance creative work, which is rare, especially in my age bracket. So I guess it's a reasonable question to ask me. And my answer used to be, if you want to succeed, you got to work hard and get better at your craft so you can make cool stuff. But every time I said this, it didn't feel quite right. And then I realized, oh yeah, that's not what I did at all. Dadoy. When I really look at the course I've charted thus far, it turns out I've learned a very different set of lessons. And that's what this video is about, just the lessons I've learned along the way. But before I go any further, a disclaimer is warranted. I'm not here to tell you what you should care about. When I say the word success in this video, what I mean is elevating your ability to move resources. This is going to be some real gnarly finance bro type beat type shit. And if that's not something you want in your psyche, respect. There are many ways to live a life, but this video is probably not for you. Don't say I didn't warn you. So, I think a lot of people have a certain idea of what the path to success looks like as a creative. They think, okay, I'm going to get really good at my craft, and then I will work very hard on a project, and then I will put that project where the public can see it, and I will get a positive reception, and I'll get a bunch of work and make a bunch of cool stuff, get some fans, and boom, successful career. And of course, many people walk this path. They throw their work into the ring, and if it's good enough, they get noticed, and people see value in it, and it leads to the life they want. In my native medium of screenwriting, which will largely be the focus here, this path looks like writing a brilliant original screenplay as a complete amateur, sending it into the blacklist, and giving it to every industry person you meet in the hopes that some producer will read it and be like, holy shit, this is great. And then your movie gets made and you're established now. It's the I'm going to get noticed because of my talent mentality. You know, maybe it's the short film grind, maybe it's script competitions, maybe it's a proof of concept. But it's the idea that through the quality of one's work, one will get catapulted into the career they want. And to be clear, this does work for some people. But overall, in general, I'm going to put forward the freezing cold take that we're not living in a meritocracy here. My evidence? Look around you. Look at the things that get made. I don't want to hate on people's hard work. Every movie is a miracle. But it should be obvious that there's not exactly a direct correlation between the quality of a script and whether or not it gets produced. A sizable chunk of YouTube traffic consists of people expressing disdain for the entertainment that comes down the pipeline. If only the most skilled people, whatever that means, were able to rise to positions of creative authority, do you think that would really be the case? Like, I've met brilliant storytellers who I genuinely believe were geniuses, far above me in terms of talent. But many of these aspiring writers, especially the younger, more idealistic ones, still carry around this meritocracy mindset. And again, it's certainly not impossible to succeed by creating engaging stories, getting noticed, and being handed the keys to the kingdom. But in general, you need to have the keys first. It doesn't matter that some of the amateur scripts I've read are better than the industry ones, because the industry people have the connections. They've done their time. They can call up insert famous actor and get them attached to the movie, and boom, now the movie's real. A hobbyist on the internet can't do that, regardless of the quality of their work. If you're just one person at the bottom with a dream, it may either comfort you or terrify you to learn that you're not competing against superior talent. You're competing against superior clout, superior money, superior tradecraft, and superior networking. So you can throw yourself into the crucible and do the traditional creative hustle, make a thing, get noticed, that's valid, or you can hear me out. I've found that a much more stable model isn't to try and win on account of your own creative vision, it's to be useful to other people's creative visions. For years, I labored under the dream of being picked, that if only I wrote my epic and put my entire heart and soul into it, producers would be unable to resist my genius. I spent like the first half of college laser focused on this, and I really thought my projects were going to blow up. I knew one industry person, and knew is a strong word. It was this 50-year-old UPM, stands for Unit Production Manager, and I called him one time to tell him about my short film, thinking it was going to be my big break, and he laughed at me. And I was heartbroken that nobody seemed to care about my projects more than I did. But it was a huge reality check, and in hindsight, it makes total sense. Like when a friend shows you their work, you're just like, yeah, this is cool, this is engaging, and that's a healthy attitude to have. But what you feel for someone else's work as a viewer is typically not going to match the investment you have in your own creation. And then you do an empathy, and you're like, so everybody feels about their creation the way I feel about my creation. And that's just in the context of amateur projects. For Hollywood filmmakers, it's amplified like 10,000%. When you see a teaser or a press release for a new movie, that's your first exposure to it, but it existed for years. That movie, especially if it's an original story, could have very well been a decade in the making. It was probably something that the filmmaker conceived of 8 years ago when they were directing a Kit Kat commercial, and then in what little free time they had between gigs, they started drafting it and redrafting it and redrafting it, and now they're like 34, and the stars have finally aligned, and it's time to make their dream movie. And they do, and it's one of the biggest achievements of their life. And you bet your ass they're not reading your Letterboxd review about what could have been done better. Time is slower in the industry. It's weird. It's like some interstellar shit. It's completely normal for a project to be in development for like half a decade at least. I can't swear on it, but I'm pretty sure I've touched projects that originated before I was born. So imagine cutting your teeth in that world, and then some kid shows up and says, gimme, I have ideas. I'm surprised that UPM guy wasn't even harsher on me. But I guess what goes around comes around, because now that I'm a little more successful, people do this to me. It's happened several times. These kids will be like, take a chance with me. Let's do this. And I'm like, so you want me to spend the small handful of favors I may or may not have on your thing and not mine? Oh, but it's going to be so good. It's going to And I hear that. Like, that's not, that's not how it works. I don't expect to be able to tell my stories the way I want to tell them for at least another 5 years. For a little while now, I've been working with a handful of decently successful people who have the ability to call up high-level producers and pitch to them. And even though some of these people I consider to be my personal friends, I am still not in a position to pitch my projects. I'm a jobber. I work on other people's visions, not my own. If I threw my hat in the ring and went, this is my time, pick me, look at my script, the people I work for would be like, okay, that's not what you're here to do. And I would lose 10 million aura and get thrown out of the meeting. If you're not an established, connected industry person, marching up to someone who is with your passion project in your hand and being like, help me make this, is the equivalent of asking them for all of their resources for free. It's hard enough to get a movie made if you're established. So if you do want to play this game on the hardest setting, which is live action, writer, director, visionary, you might have to rethink your strategy. The strategy I would recommend is very simple. Build a stable base for your career by providing value to others. Figure out who needs help. DM some directors. There are thousands upon thousands of them. It's not just the 6 people whose names you see all the time. Visionaries are everywhere, and a lot of them see writing as a chore, because it is. So just be like, hey, let me take that off your hands. A lot of podcasts need writers. A lot of YouTubers need writers, whether they know it or not. But whatever your angle is, stop expecting to break in as a visionary. It's typically not how it works. You break in as a servant. You become useful to people, some of whom have a lot of influence. You build a network. You stay loyal. You work hard. And realistically, you do some work for free. I know, but people aren't going to gamble on you unless A, you have a significant body of relevant, and I mean relevant work, or B, you pose zero risk. At least give them a free trial period of your services. Make them feel 100% comfortable. Take as much work off your plate as possible. If they have to bend over backwards to accommodate someone who is supposed to be accommodating them, that's going to be annoying. I'm not saying do this, but I have willingly put myself in some really stressful positions because I didn't want to be a burden on the people I was working for, and it paid off. And a lot of the time, these people never even knew what I went through for them, and I'm sure they would have offered to help if I had asked. These are good people, but I chose to handle it internally and not bring that negative energy into our dynamic. That's sadly what the universe rewards. Do what you will with that. There's no judgment in having personal boundaries, and we do have objective limits where we just literally cannot do a thing. So protect your peace, protect your sanity. I'm just telling you my experience. Just wanted to clarify something. When I talk about being a servant, I'm not talking about climbing up the set hierarchy on a production. That's kind of a completely different thing. Those are good jobs, union jobs, wonderful communities, but that is not the path to get into the creative bubble. Those creative roles, creative producers, writers, directors, they came in through back roads. I remember I was a PA on a set one time, and one day after we wrapped, the other PAs and I were talking to the second AD, and we were like, Casey, do you want to direct? And he was like, well, I mean, it's not really like what I do, like I'm an AD. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? It's just a director with an A in front of it. Turns out it's like a completely different thing. There are directors who are absolute gangsters that can do all the positions below them, but there are also directors who are kind of just these artistic entities that float above the production. So keep that in mind. I also want to address the idea of being a story consultant as a job. I get a lot of comments that are like, wow, that's such a cool career path. How did you get into that? Was there like some course or some certification process? I'm like, no. I have a big YouTube channel. I use it to advertise. That's it. There's no legitimacy to be had. And I'm pretty good at what I do, but there are like 8 billion people on this planet, and probably a decent amount of them could do it better than I do. Do I feel a little bit insecure about that? Yeah, sometimes. But it's not a meritocracy. Kids also ask me about what they should major in. I graduated with a general media production degree and a minor in marketing, but the degree itself isn't going to get you anywhere. I've worked for hundreds of people. I've never had to show a degree. There's no such thing as a legitimate art education. So if you are wanting and able to attend higher education, do it for the actual skills, not the prestige. Because all people are really going to care about is what you can contribute. Remember what I said about working for free, about giving people a zero-risk trial period? Well, that's kind of what my free YouTube content is. I just demonstrate my ability to solve other people's problems over and over again. My business model is, here is some value. Would you like some more value? Hire me. So I can sort of bypass the work for free stage. And I think that's true of anyone with a big portfolio to an extent, but mine works so well because it's explicitly other-oriented from the beginning. If your online presence consists of, here's my style, come to me if you want something like this, that's the way a lot of artists get commissions. But then you look at someone like Jake Don't Draw, and he's on another level because he goes, I know what problems you're having, and here's how you can solve them. I would rather be coached by him over some renowned artist with a distinct visual style and an impressive portfolio, because those people are just good artists. But Jake is showing his audience how to solve problems in real time, and then everybody in his comment section goes, OMG, you made it so simple. Finally, someone put it into words. When people start saying things like that to you, that's how you know you found the sweet spot. Meet people where they are, provide value. You don't have to have a big public platform to do this. It certainly makes it easier, but you can also sow your seeds in Discord servers, in DMs, in your existing network. One of the first projects I did consulting for before the channel was just this 27-year-old alum I knew who was planning a low-budget feature. So I said, hey bro, let me help you build this thing out. And even though the movie never got made, it was still a really cool experience. I know I've made all of this marketing stuff seem somewhat depressing, especially since it runs counter to my overall sunny disposition. But while I am encouraging you to acknowledge reality, I'm not telling you to be realistic like a jaded parent would. You should see my bucket list. It's hilariously ambitious. In fact, I think you can push through the horrors. You'll find there's a deeper, more profound optimism underneath. An optimism that's actually based on reality. The fantasy says millions of people have great stories they want to make into big budget productions. Do you have what it takes? The reality says being a writer doesn't just mean working on things that get made. People will be like, such and such only has 1 or 2 writing credits, yet they get to do the big budget superhero movie? Like, yeah. What do you think, they just yoinked that person out of a crowd? They've been in the game. Do you realize how many projects are just floating around out there that people don't know about? For every Autopiary, I'd wager there are thousands of top-shelf, unproduced screenplays that never made it to the internet. All of those incredible stories that you'll never experience. Your alternate dimension self's favorite movie is just in a binder somewhere, and you'll never know. But people worked on those screenplays. People probably got paid to work on those screenplays. A lot of those screenplays were bought. Every single long-standing project I've worked on has a pile of old drafts behind it. And a lot of those old drafts people got paid to write. And then I come in and I maybe get paid to write my draft. Like, will it get made in its current form? Who knows? It's not really my business. I'm getting treated equitably. I'm doing what I love. It's fine. If your orientation to media is just as a consumer/imitator, you might not realize how much of the creative world is B2B. It's not all about likes and comments and how the public responds to you. Most of the opportunities happen behind the scenes. Some more good news. You can get emotionally invested in someone else's project. I have absolutely fallen in love with some of the stories I've worked on, to the point where I've worked for free, not as a marketing strategy, but because I genuinely cared. I've paid for tickets to fly myself out to work with people. So it's not all fake smiles and dragging your feet until it's your turn to be the visionary. If you love creating, you love collaborating. Even more good news, our cup runneth over. There are so many people out there who will be mentors to you. If you show up for them, if you show them that you give a shit and you're willing to put in the time and you know your place and you're not demanding favors, people will be so warm and welcoming to you. I feel like if I describe anything remotely strategic, people will jump to assuming it's a zero-sum game rife with backstabbing, but it's not. The creative world is fun. It's an exchange of value. It's a transfer of wisdom between generations. people do get fucked over, so you have to make sure you're being treated equitably, make sure everything is on paper, but you don't have to fuck anybody over to succeed. You can move with honor on these streets. Like, people have this socialist guilt thing where you're not allowed to talk about business in any context other than complaining about its existence. And if you do, you'll get side-eyed like, oh my God, that's so slimy, Lucas. How dare you talk about money? This whole time I thought you were a dirty-footed typewriter poet sustaining himself on nothing but creative bliss and non-GMO almonds. But you can do both. I genuinely love creating things and helping people create things, but I will also fully admit that you are my target market and I'm selling services to you. As a creative, you are not only still in capitalism, you are in one of its saltiest subdivisions, my brother. You cannot expect to reach the heights you want if you deny the infrastructure of this bitch. And I'm a 7'2" white guy. I come from a pretty stable background. I'm a native English speaker. I understand that there are advantages there, but also people don't keep me around just because they like me. They keep me around because I provide value, and I know that. I've never been popular. You should see me at parties. I kind of just stand there like, oh, you guys want to play cornhole? The only reason some people think I'm cool on the internet is because I'm able to spend hours writing down the words I say before I say them. So don't rule yourself out just because you're not some lovable networking fairy. Being flexible and being accommodating and relieving other people's burdens will get you a lot further than being likable. Obviously, it doesn't cost anything to be courteous and polite to the humans you encounter, but if widespread likability is your whole product, your whole appeal, that's a dangerous game. The people who do get to the top by being likable in the public eye are in a riskier position because their brand has no spine. It's just, OMG, I love that guy. But then one day that guy slips up, says something a little unsavory, personal life leaks to the press, and it becomes a popular opinion cascade, and the parasocial high is disrupted, which is inevitable because it's an unnatural state to begin with, and suddenly that guy is just a guy, or worse. And what's left? What value did he add aside from being likable? Literally nothing. Poof. And sometimes it's a full-on cancellation over ethical breaches, but most of the time it's a slow regression into seeing the person as just a person. Like, go to a video of Billie Eilish right now and look in the comments. You'll start to see it. Oh, she's losing relevance. She's trying so hard. That's where it starts. I think pop culture runs on soft parasocial bonds. Not full-on delusional, I'm in love with this person, but a subtler, more insidious form of idealization that most people, myself included, have experienced at one point or another. And it's so easy to shatter. I remember one time I saw a video of Bryan Cranston making a your mom joke at a convention, and I didn't think anything of it. But then I scrolled down and I saw one singular comment, which was, that was honestly so immature and uncalled for. And suddenly, the idealization disappeared, and I was like, yeah, that was kind of immature and uncalled for. And it damaged my perception of him as the coolest guy ever, and he became just a guy, which he is. That's how you're supposed to feel about another flesh and blood human. But at the same time, I do feel less inclined to watch Bryan's work and keep up with his career. And I can't will that idealization back into existence. It's just gone over nothing. Just, don't you think she looks tired? That's all it takes. Just one misplaced note in the chord, and it sours you. It doesn't ruin you, but it just taints you a little bit. Remember when Jim Carrey did the Biden impression and everybody was just like, Look at Katy Perry right now. Look at all of the old YouTubers who didn't have big career-ending scandals and kind of just faded away. Look at the endless ebb and flow of hype and relevance and personal branding over the years, and tell me you want to bet the farm on that. Yes, being likable is a form of value, but it is the most unstable and easily destroyed form of value. For me, the thought of being behind the scenes and contributing to cool projects and slowly, steadily building a rock-solid base for my career is much more appealing. In a world of stars, be a planet, damn it. So yeah, this is just something for all the aspirers out there, mostly derived from my personal experience. Yours might be completely different, and I'd love to hear your story if it indeed runs counter to my own. I just thought this pragmatic angle was sorely lacking from the current how to be a successful creative discourse. All I ever hear is, oh, you want to be a pro writer? Just get good at writing. And as uplifting as that is, I don't think it's painting a complete picture, and I think it's causing young, success-minded creatives to expend their energy inefficiently, as I once did. Obviously, you won't be able to build stories for others, much less build your eventual masterpiece if you don't know how. So do work on your craft. But if you want to go big and you got no connections and no disposable income, you really shouldn't be hiring a story consultant. The best I can do is make your story rad as fuck, but chances are your rad as fuck story only has as much leverage as you do. Personally, I'd say split your time 70-30. 30 on your own work and 70 playing the market, but really it depends on where you stand. We're all coming from different places, and obviously this was more about like the live action film scene, which most of you aren't even gunning for in the first place. So just be smart, I guess, is my thesis in all of this. That's all. Have a splendid day, everyone.